Good evening and welcome to Free Souls Radio CF. This is your host, Elder Pamela Horn of Consuming Fire Ministries, along with my co-host, Daphne Horn. Amen. And we're coming to you from Haw River, North Carolina with Fireside Talks, the ingredients of godly relationships.
Amen.
Amen. Amen. And we left off last week talking about before you say I do. Before you say I do. So this is part 2 of before you say I do. And I believe last week we got into, we never did, we just did get through talking about finances.
Yes.
That's a big thing. Before you say I do, make sure you are clear with your spouse about the finances.
Or significant
other. Your spouse. You know, your spouse to be, before you say I do, make sure you do agree on those finances, because money it's a big issue in marriage, and it becomes a big issue when you don't communicate with one another. You know, if you come to an agreement on on your finances before you say I do, then it's not a problem. But once you say I do and there's things that you haven't agreed upon, those financial things will ruin a marriage sometimes. And all boils down to communication.
Yes.
Amen. So this is part 2, and we're going to talk about trust. Ooh, that's a big one. 1 John 4:18 says, there is no fear in love, but perfect love casteth out fear, because fear hath torment. He that feareth is not made perfect in love. Amen. And a lot of times, I think about in a marriage, when you're fearful in a marriage, it's like, or you don't trust each other, it could have been something that, you went through in your past relationships that cause you not to trust that man. But, before you say I do, make sure you trust each other. Make sure you have no reason not to trust,
Absolutely.
because if you don't trust your spouse to be, then that could be disastrous. It could be disastrous, because you can look for things where there is nothing, and actually you could create problems because you don't trust, or you have those insecurities, or things that have plagued you in past relationships. You bring them into the marriage,
right?
And
almost
that's
like taking like you said, bringing the baggage, or just those insecurities, and almost taking it out on that spouse to be like, I don't know.
Wow. So as strange as it might sound, a lot of couples don't discuss their issues with trust until it's too late.
You
Instead
definitely
of
need to do that before you get married, though.
Instead of waiting until the trust circle is broken, you should make it a priority to talk about your trust issues within the relationship. When you have that open discussion, that open communication about the topic early on, maybe you have some triggers. You might need to sit down and discuss that with him. Hey, I feel this way about, just like when I saw something, I think on a group chat the other day, and it's like, okay, you say you're engaged to be married, or you're planning to be married. Does he have to call you before he comes by the house?
Oh, wow.
And that was a big, I looked at that, I said, wow, that's right. If you're engaged to be married and you're planning to merge your lives together, why would he have to call or she have to call still before she comes by?
Yeah.
There should be no surprises when she gets there or he gets there at your house. Actually, he should have a key. if you're
about
getting
to
ready
be
to be married, then you supposedly have reached the level of trust with each other that you get ready to combine your lives. Your lives are already merging.
Yes.
So why wouldn't your significant other have a key to your house?
Right.
That's
right there.
And people might disagree, but it's just like, do you trust the person? If you're telling them, well, don't come by here unless you call. Whoa,
Yeah, that's
but you still want to maintain, your privacy or whatever, or your independence, you know what I'm saying? But still, or your space. But still, to say don't come by here unless you call first.
I don't know about that.
No.
For me, I mean, I wouldn't say that. My spouse to be would be, it'd be pretty much like his home, maybe that was just a statement that you're sharing, but still.
Yeah, it's like, something is still being hidden.
Yeah.
To me, if I was being engaged to someone and he tells me don't come by here unless you call me first.
Or she.
No, I'm saying if I was engaged to a man and he said to me, don't come by here unless you call first. Okay, are we engaged or not? Do you have another fiance? Do you have a person on the side that you're still seeing until, you're still sowing those wild oats until you say I do or what is it? Because if you ask me to marry you, then to me they're saying, okay, we don't have any secrets.
Right. Everything should be out on the table.
I trust you, and I want you to trust me. And right there, that's not trust to me.
No, that example is not trust to me either.
Mm-hmm. So just don't wait until you have a reason not to trust each other, or something comes up where you find yourself, your trust is broken.
And you've already said I do.
Yeah.
When you could have
ironed that stuff out before you said I do. You should have ironed and discussed that, early on to alleviate those insecurities and to be able to build that trust before you said I do. Because there's certain things that you may have gone through or he may have gone through. Maybe he got cheated on, by his former.
Who hasn't got cheated on?
But I'm saying maybe he was married before.
Yeah.
And it didn't work out because she cheated on him, or, because a lot of times, and that was another thing, that there was the discussion on, that someone had a boyfriend that cheated, that did this, did that, treated her real bad, and then she gets a good man.
Oh.
And he is just doing everything, providing, working, just give her anything.
But she's not accustomed to it.
Then she goes to cheating on him, and I think it was either cheating or abuse or something, because it was abuse. I think he was abusive and a cheater. And then when she gets a good man, it's like, she's so accustomed to being cheated on and abused, and because this man is not treating her that way, she walks all over him and treats him bad.
And it's kind of,
And it happens.
I'm saying it's too bad, because hopefully that good man doesn't turn,
bad.
Yeah.
And a lot of them do when they go through stuff like that. They take it out on the next woman.
Yeah.
And it's really detrimental to a man when a woman hurts him that way. When he opens up fully, falls in love and opens his heart up to a woman, and then she just crushes him. It's like, oh man, it's part of that heart is always going to be closed off. Unless, God comes in and changes and does some reconstruction there, because he's going to always have it in the back of his mind, or she's going to be just like the other one did. So I'm going to, like Tyler Perry said,
and I think
Madea said, I'm going to get him before I get got, and a lot of people,
depend on, though, like how young you are, maybe, because sometimes when you're young and you have a failed relationship or marriage, you can recover a lot better or a lot quicker than someone maybe who's older and more, set in their ways.
A lot of times they get hurt young.
Yeah.
And it's like, from there on, they're no longer that good man that, because they've been jaded, in a sense, damaged. And they look at the whole outlook on things is different. In relationships is different sometimes, and sometimes they can recover and move on, but a lot of men, because they weren't the cheater, they weren't, they were the good guy and they got walked on, they turn into that bad guy, that nightmare, because a lot of times they feel like, okay, well, women don't understand. Women don't understand a good man, or they don't know how to treat a good man. So, I'm gonna act like a good man, but I'm gonna get mine in, basically. So these insecurities or trust issues, there's individual issues a lot of times that you have to work.
I was gonna say it really boils down to going back to getting to know each other, like you said, individual issues, but again, really getting to know each other.
You have to work on your individual issues before you can, merge together and become as one, because, you can't become one
if you
when you've got some serious issues.
Yeah. And then, I mean, it doesn't have to be perfect, but I do think if you ultimately get married, you will still continue to have to work and evolve, and it changes. It doesn't even always stay.
Things will come up, as they come up, but if you there's certain things that there's certain things that you need to work on, and you're not, you're not delivered from, you ain't over it. You're not over it, and you go into a relationship. I had these trust issues, and I mean, really, really had trust issues, and those things still come up. They still come up to this day. And I know those are things that I have to work on, but it's hard for me to really just let go and trust someone.
But I think too, we don't give ourselves enough credit. You said you had your trust issues. And I guess sometimes moving on to the next relationship didn't make it any better when there was a trigger or something, right?
Yeah.
So in having your trust issues, did you ever get along get along, like
it's
go
a
off to the side and just.
It's a trigger when the phone rings and you have to go in another room and talk.
That is a trigger.
That's a trigger.
Yeah, that's
I'm like,
yeah.
okay, who is he talking to that I can't that he can't talk to this person in front of me? Who is this girl?
But
who is this
understand
person?
that's not all you, but that experience or that incident is not making you any better.
Right.
It's damaging you even
But he
more.
needs to know, well, look,
Yeah.
When you do that, it makes me feel like, you got something to hide.
Absolutely.
So maybe, it just is a matter of conversation. Like, this is a trigger for me. This makes me feel this way, even though it might not be valid, this is
right.
Is valid to me because it's my experience.
In the moment, and not letting it slide.
Yeah. And he may work on that or whatever, knowing that I have that issue until I learn to trust, and to,
and then to
relax in, what I'm saying?
In the relationship.
In that relationship at the time.
I mean, because starting out a relationship, but we're talking about getting ready to say I do, just before I say I do. Yeah, these are really serious
these are
issues,
things that, you haven't worked out. So once you get into marriage, if you haven't worked out and worked through these serious issues, you don't need to say I do. That's why we're having the conversation before you say I do. Look at these things, because a lot of times you push stuff to the side, and even on the wedding day, you might be like, okay, he's late, or what did him and his groomsmen do last night, and you don't have that trust,
that assurance,
and
I don't know what to say.
Let's go on.
Trust.
Let's talk about intimacy. Intimacy is a very important subject, and it should be talked about openly between couples, amongst couples. And when the general subject causes people to blush or feel uneasy when they don't want to talk about intimacy. Intimacy is very important to a topic that couples need to discuss, because there's some triggers in intimacy, in being intimate too. You don't know what can trigger a person. Some people don't like to be touched certain ways. If you're not comfortable talking about or discussing these topics because it's about surrounding sex and sex issues, then there is something deeper there that has to be addressed. As a Christian, if you're waiting before before you become intimate with your partner, if you're waiting for marriage, you still need to have those conversations, especially if you've been in relationships in the past and you had issues, sexual issues, there's certain things that you need to know. You need to know what he's expecting, because if he's expecting certain things that you're like,
right,
I ain't gonna do that, I'm not gonna do this, and then you get into a marriage and you're like, no, I'm not doing this, I didn't sign up for this. And he's looking at you like, well, you're my wife. And you're like, and but he should know you know, it's certain things, because a lot of times when you get into church and stuff, a lot of people start giving you sexual hangups about sex. Really, I'm serious, because you know,
Well,
and it could be uncomfortable to have those conversations, and then he might be the one that's kind of uptight about certain things, and then you're like,
well, in this day and time, before couples are saying I do, are they really waiting? Like, I know you said some people, if they decide, they're deciding to do
they're
that.
supposed to be waiting, you know, and I hopefully, you know, it would be, that's what I
Yeah,
hope for. But never say never, you know, because we're flesh.
You
We're
do need
flesh
to
and
have a
blood, and a lot of times they don't make it to the
Right.
wedding night, you know.
But you're right though. Even if they are a couple that's deciding to wait, they should have lots of discussion around intimacy.
And you know, sometimes, you know, I pose this question, because you know, when you make that vow, to love, honor, and obey in sickness and in health,
Yeah.
till death do you part, rich or poor, and all that stuff. What happens when there's some issues, some sexual issues?
Yeah.
What happens? You know, when you say I do and you haven't discussed these things, you know, you don't have no clue, and you waiting on the wedding night for, you know,
Yeah.
stuff to happen, and it doesn't happen.
Well,
And you find out that, you know, it ain't gonna happen. You know what I'm saying? And you're like, okay, I waited about 20 years, you know, for this husband, and you trying to tell me that, you know, it ain't gonna be none.
Wow.
I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah, it's a really big
So
component.
are you wrong? You know, would you be wrong? You just said those vows for sickness and in health, but he's really lied to you.
Wow.
You know, and how would you feel?
Oh, not good.
I would feel good.
No, not good.
I really wouldn't feel good. I really would not feel good.
Why get married?
But
that's a part of being married, right?
It's a part of being married. But if he gave you that choice, and let you know, well, hey, I am impotent, basically, and or I have some erectile dysfunction problems. You know, let's just put
health
it out
problems,
there.
Basically,
you know, health. Yeah, you have to think about it. So it's different in my viewpoint when you're in a marriage and you've been married for a number of years, and then your spouse gets sick.
Yeah.
You know, but when you're just starting out a marriage and that hasn't been communicated, your expectations are, we're going to have a healthy, you know, normal sex life.
Yes.
And then you find out, you know, that's not in the cards. Okay, well, you didn't disclose full disclosure.
Honest.
Full disclosure, you weren't honest with me about this. And you know, I feel
that's kind of betrayal.
Yeah, I feel betrayed. I feel, you know, like I've been bamboozled, you know, all of that
but
stuff.
Even if you're a woman that's been waiting, you probably was really anticipating sex.
Yeah.
Let's just be real.
Exactly. You know, it's and for somebody that's just it don't matter one way or another. Some people it doesn't. That's who you need to be married to. Somebody that it doesn't matter. You know, I'm not saying that that because I mean, I've heard, and these were young couples that went through, I mean, in their 20s, married and having issues like that, and he didn't disclose it, and they didn't know, what was going on, and you're praying and praying, and and things ain't changing. You started thinking it's you, or he's just not attracted, and come to find out he's impotent. Can be impotent. Impotence can be, there could be a number of reasons behind it. Sometimes all it takes is a man to go and get himself checked out, and a lot of times they're too embarrassed to do that. It could be something that is a problem that could be fixed, but because they don't want to talk about it to anybody, it's like they'd rather be in denial, and then the woman ends up suffering behind that. Same thing with a man and a woman that, he finds out on the wedding night that, she don't want to have sex. What do you do? What do you do? Before you say I do, you need to know. You know about these things. Make sure that you're completely honest with your partner, so that nobody feels like they're being left out, left in the dark, bamboozled, lied to, and all of that stuff. Sex was created to be, an experience to bind that husband and wife together in what the Bible calls a one flesh unity. And since God invented sex, he gets to set the parameters for how we use sex, right? Sex was designed for marriage, period. Any sex outside of those boundaries is sin. And I heard there was a discussion. Went to this church one night, and they were discussing, will homosexuals go to heaven? And it got on the subject, and the guest speaker said, basically they took the route that sex outside of marriage, any is sin. So if they're not married, then they're committing sin. So that was before the gay marriage thing was legalized and all that stuff. So that was like right on the cusp of that, them fighting for the marriage rights and stuff. So to me, that was a cop out, because she didn't say, no, it's a sin, or take that route or the biblical stance. They said, well, if they're not married, then, they're committing fornication, and fornication is a sin, and left it like that, but never came out and said, no, homosexuality is wrong. So it gives people the impression that, okay, as long as I'm married, that's why they fought for marriage, because it's like that's going to make it okay, even in God's sight. No. And it's crazy, because the Bible talks about pride, and a haughty spirit, and when you look at the promise of God and his rainbow, the rainbow promise has there's 7 colors to the rainbow. But when you look at the pride flag, the gay pride flag, there's 6 colors. There's 6 colors. And when I studied up on that 7th color, the one that was missing was indigo. And indigo represents the covering of God.
Oh, wow.
It's deep. I said, wow. So he hates pride and a haughty spirit, and then for them to say gay pride or whatever, and then to have a pride flag that only has 6 colors, and the one color that's missing is the color that represents God's protection.
Wow.
Yes, amen. Woo, Jesus. So any sex outside of marriage is sin, and marital sex is between a man and a woman. Period. Because the sex drive is so powerful, the Bible will encourage marriage in order to avoid sexual immorality, right? So marital sex is to be mutual and frequent, so that the husband and the wife, neither one of them are tempted.
Amen.
So my body is his and his body is mine. So we're not to defraud one another for those reasons. So a lot of times when you get into situations like that, you get married and you haven't talked about the sexual intimacy part, and you haven't had those discussions and been open with one another, and then you find out, there's a problem or there's an issue here. She has a problem, or he has a problem, or we both have a problem because we don't see eye to eye on how to do this thing,
Right.
And so either way, you haven't communicated what you expect, or what
maybe healthy intimacy is.
Yeah. But when you don't,
what's your view on intimacy?
Yeah.
What's your view on intimacy?
Right. Sometimes it could be she likes to be cuddled up with, wants a man is gonna hold her.
Yes.
And he might be like, I'm sleeping in the other room, after, and he might be like, I'm not a cuddler, I'm not a, and you're like, okay, well, I can't live like this, because I need a hug. I need that. And he's like, okay, I got my own room. But after you come together sexually, then, he wants to go into his bedroom or something, and sleep. I can't sleep with side by side with somebody, because snoring gets on my nerves, or I just like to be by myself in the bed, and he's like, you need to know these things, because
that's very important.
For someone who likes touch and is touchy-feely, not to have that is like, okay, what I get married for? Now, this is something that's not being fulfilled, basically. So I'm going to start looking elsewhere. And a lot of times that's what happens. So that was part 2. Jesus, it's getting good, y'all. Part 2 of Before You Say I Do. And that concludes our show for this evening. You can tune in every Sunday between 7 p.m. and 8 p.m. for Fireside Talks, the ingredients of godly relationships. If you want to purchase my book, Daughters of the King, Stop Kissing Frogs, you can purchase that on Amazon. Or to partner with Consuming Fire Ministries, you can cash app your donation to $Pam Horn. Or support us by checking out our website at consumingfirebooks.weebly.com. Also, we have a YouTube channel. We would like for you to like and subscribe to our channel. And our channel is called Fireside Talks. Fireside Talks on YouTube. So until we meet again, we always say we are praying for you, and we bid you blessings and peace. Amen.
Amen.